All right, these first three examples, we are going to need our calculator. Notice that the directions say to solve on the indicated domain, so that is how we know whether this one is degrees or radians. So we are in degrees, obviously, because there are degree symbols. The notation is a little bit different. It's just in inequality form versus what we've seen before, which is interval notation. The brackets mean included, parentheses means not included. Therefore, whenever we have the equal sign, that is included. No equal sign means not included, which would be the equivalent of parentheses in interval notation. All right, so on this one, we're going to go to our calculator. We're going to type in sine of 2x. You can put the parentheses or not, which says you're not adding anything to it, so it doesn't matter. 0.21. We need to make sure we are in the correct mode, which we are not, so we need to change that to degree. I like hitting zoom 7, so it kind of gets you at least started on the right path of the domain given. And then I'm going to go change my window. I only want to see the numbers between 0 and 360. And then when I graph it, I can see exactly how many answers that I'm going to have. So there's your sine graph. There's your line, negative 0.21. So notice I'm going to have 4 answers. So second trace 5. I want to scroll over. I'm going to find my first one. Doesn't matter what order you find them in, but I'm going to do them in order. So use the correct variable, x equals 96.061 degrees. And then we would do that again for the second one. Second trace, enter. Move your cursor over, and you get 173.939 degrees. For the next one, you could do a couple different things. If you like finding the intersection, find the intersection. If not, second trace 5, enter, enter, enter. That's how you do the intersection. If not, then you can just add the period to the first one, which would give you 276.061 degrees. Add the period to the second, and you would get 353.939 degrees. So there are your 4 answers. This one, notice the domain given is in radians. Now, if I gave you the same problem and asked you to find the general solutions, the degrees or radians wouldn't be given. You would have to figure that out, and you can figure that out very easily by looking at that 1, x plus 1. There's no degree symbol, so that's how we know we would be in radians. But this one is over a given domain, so it's easy to tell. Important that we type this in correctly. The 2 does not need its own parentheses because it's not a fraction. It is very important that you close your parentheses right there before you add the 4. And then we just set that equal to 2. If we just hit graph, we're going to get a bunch of business on our calculator because right now the calculator is going from 0 to 360. So instead of going from 0 to about 6, it's showing you every cycle between 0 and 360. That's why I like to hit zoom 7, because it will adjust your window for degrees or radians. And then if you want to go one step further and just look at the window for 0 to 2 pi, you can do that. When I hit 2 pi, if I go down, notice it changes it. Doesn't change it away from 2 pi. All it does is calculates 2 pi and puts it in numeric form. And so now when we graph it, we can again tell how many answers we are going to have. Notice we have 4. So same thing, second trace 5. Now if you don't know where your cursor is, you can always tell where your cursor is by down at the bottom it says X and Y, or there it comes, but you can also just scroll to the other line, up or down. Takes you from one graph to the other. I like scrolling on the horizontal line, so I'm going to move it down to the horizontal line. Find this first value first over here. Enter, enter, enter. x equals 0.865. And you do that for each of the four, or you can just keep adding the period, because tangent, all the answers are the period apart. You don't have to have two different answers, you just have one plus the period each time, which is different from sine and cosine. So we find the next one, 2.436. Again, 4.006. And again, 5.577. All of those numbers are between 0 and 2 pi. So once again on the calculator, second trace 5. You can scroll over to the next one, and you would just do that all 4 times. There's your answer. If you hit enter too many times, it goes away. You just have to redo it. Sine squared x minus 1. Now this one's a little different because I don't think we've ever put anything squared in the calculator before. So first thing, mode. We're in the right mode. Second thing, type it in correctly. Third thing, make sure your window is appropriate. So the way you type this in the calculator is you open your parentheses, then type sine. Parentheses will automatically open. Type your x minus 1, close, 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 and then you can square it. Very, very important that you type that in correctly. And then down here in y2, 2 divided by 3. I'm going to zoom 7. Now, even though this looks like a sinusoid, it's not really a sinusoid. It does not have a period. Sine x has a period of 360 over b or 2 pi over b. Sine squared x does not have those same characteristics. So we do just have to find all 3 positive values using the intersection function. So our first answer, use the correct variable, equals 0.045. Again, second trace 5. Scroll over. You don't like scrolling on the curve, scroll on the straight line, whatever you want to do. Again, you hit enter too many times, it goes away, so don't get enter happy. Next one, 1.956. Whoops, just kidding, 5. 1.955. And then our third one, 3.186. And there are your first 3 positive. This is a question where we would never ask you to find the general solutions. We can only ask you the general solutions when there is a period. So if it was squared, we wouldn't ask you for the period because you can't find one. There is no pattern. Alright, so that's the calculator problem. Here, this is one review from, we've done this one a bunch. General solutions, the inverse sine of root 3 over 2 equals 2 theta. Be sure that you know your unit circle. Some of you still don't know that unit circle, and it is hurting you a lot. Know your unit circle. So, where is y equal to root 3 over 2, so that's going to be at 60 degrees equals 2 theta, and at 120 equals 2 theta. Therefore, theta equals 30 degrees, and theta equals 60 degrees. So our general solutions would be theta equals 30 degrees plus the period. Period equals 360 divided by 2, so 180n. And theta equals 60 degrees plus 180 degrees in. 2 general solutions. And this last one, you've seen one like this with a trinomial. This one is not a trinomial, it is binomial, 2 terms. So when there's only 2 terms and one of them is squared, it's just a GCF. All we're doing is taking out the GCF. That GCF is sine 4x. then what we have left is still a sine 4x plus 1, and that equals 0. Now, notice that we do not have equal signs right here. So what that is equivalent to is 0 to 2 pi, but not including 0 or 2 pi. So if 0 happens to be an answer, you do not include it. If 2 pi happens to be an answer, you do not include it. If those were brackets, you would include it. So now we set up our two factors equal to 0, and we solve. Inverse sine of 0 equals 4x. That happens twice. Where is y equal to 0? Don't get confused between x and y. This is a very costly error. So 0 equals 4x, and pi equals 4x. How did I know to use pi instead of 180? Because of the domain given. It tells me 0 to 2 pi right there. That tells me. Taking the degree off 180 does not make it a radian. Well, it does. It just makes it an incorrect radian. Don't just get rid of the degrees and think that now you've got it in radians. So here we get x equals 0 and x equals pi over 4. Now this step right here tells us what the period is. The period is 2 pi over 4, which is pi over 2. So we are going to have a lot of answers. Answers happen every pi over 2. So I'm going to start with this 0. X equals 0 is an answer, but because of the domain given, it is not, because 0 is not included. But that doesn't mean no solution. It just means we don't include that. No solution means we could never get to x equals. So we're going to add 2 pi over 2 until we get to too big. So if we add pi over 2 to 0, obviously we get pi over 2. Then we get pi. 3 pi over 2, 2 pi. 2 pi is not less than 2 pi. Therefore, we do not include it. So then we go to the pi over 4. Pi over 4 plus pi over 2 is 3 pi over 4. Plus pi over 2, 5 pi over 4, plus pi over 2, 7 pi over 4, 9 pi over 4 is bigger than 2 pi, so we do not include it. So now we have this other factor over here, sine 4x equals 1. So the inverse sine, negative 1 of negative 1 is equal to 4x. That happens one time down here at 3 pi over 2. Divide by 4. So x equals 3 pi over 8. So there's another answer, 3 pi over 8. You can add and subtract the period until you get too small or too big. If you subtract the period, you're already negative, so we're not going to subtract, so all we're going to do is add. So we add 2 pi to that, which is 4 pi over 8, so we get 7 pi over 8. Add another 2 pi, or another pi over 4, 11 pi over 8. 15 pi over 8. 19 pi over 8 is bigger than 2 pi, so there are your answers.